Jane, Johannesburg, William, Johannesburg. Cool. So, Roman, I have to ask, how on earth did you find us?
I don't recall. I think over the CO coffee chat, or virtual advisory board announcements, possibly.
Could
I,
be.
I,
Yes, we've been
one
doing
of
quite a lot of
one of
work with
those one of
we've been
those
doing
two.
quite a lot of work with VAB. That's
Yeah, yeah,
useful to know.
yeah.
Cool. So we've got a few others joining. Cool. Welcome. Great. Well, we're past 12 o'clock, so in honor of you being here on time, let's get going. So just in case you've gone for the wrong webinar, this is an opportunity to go through the Applied Directorship program in as much detail as you need to understand how it works and what the potential benefits are for you as an individual. If you've got any questions, please stick your hands up or unmute and let us know. Yeah, so the Applied Directorship program started by Sirdar in 2017. Quick intro of me. So I've been with Sirdar since 2013. I used to be in the IT industry and then started to move into the board space. And I've been running workshops. I've been sitting on boards, etc. for Sirdar sure, what is that? 12, nearly 13 years. It's frightening. And Sirdar, the name Sirdar, for those of you who hadn't heard us before, so Roman, you may not have heard this, it comes from the lead Sherpa on a mountain expedition. So we've got quite a few images along the way of mountain climbing, and that's why. So the analogy is decide how big a mountain you want to climb, and we will go along with you on the journey like a Sirdar would, helping, supporting, making sure you've got the right equipment, right training, right team, and go along with you on the journey to pull you out of the way if there's an avalanche coming, but help and support you to achieve your goal, achieve your summit, build the business that you're aiming to build. And primarily focused on working with executive team, but particularly with boards. And that's how we ended up putting together this program, because we were finding that we were placing directors on boards, we were helping and supporting the board from a company secretarial perspective, but we were really struggling to find directors who had the requisite skills to actually take the boards forward. Maybe because we've got such a small group, you can just say out loud. So this course is specifically designed for people who want to become a director or who already are a director, and it doesn't really matter what your level of experience is. There will be something for you that you thought, oh, I should have known that. Oh, I need to unlearn that. It really doesn't matter, because so much has changed in the last few years that it's important for all of us to upskill to a completely different level if we really want to be adding value as a director. So any of you in the room who's an experienced director who served on a board as either an exec or a non-exec director? Hi, Habitsa. Mabitsa, sorry. Jane, have you served on any boards?
No, I'm an aspiring board member.
Okay, good. Roman?
No, I was just in the advisory board, but not as a director, no.
Okay. So Jane aspiring. William, where do you fit? Have you been a director as an executive? Are you aspiring? You move into the space of next gen director with a family business, or yeah, CEO, entrepreneur, or founder?
Aspiring.
Aspiring, fantastic.
Mm.
And those, Jane and William, have you both had executive experience?
Yes, I do have executive experience, and I've done my MBA. Now I just wanted to, venture into boards.
Good for you. That was part of my journey. I did lots of experience at executive level and with larger companies, and then I did my MBA, and then I ended up joining a company as an executive director, and ultimately now I've become a non-exec director. So it's important to learn all of the management stuff, but it's all important to understand that being a director is very different from being a manager, and that's what we try to get across in the course, like Applied Directorship program. Who else we got? Mabitsa. Are you executive?
Hello. Hi, Tim.
Hello. Hi.
Aspiring director.
Aspiring. And also, what sort of experience have you had so far?
Banking for over 10 years and currently in senior management.
Senior management. Okay, awesome. And then we got Lou.
Can be me, William. I haven't had, I would say, the life of executive experience, but I've interacted a lot as a senior manager.
Okay, good. Okay, well then, absolutely, the best way of you, as it were, jumping up the curve of experience is to do something like the Applied Directorship program, because we try and keep it as practical as possible. So there are many theoretical courses out there, and the Institute of Directors does a really good job of teaching the theory of companies acting for what the responsibilities are. We've taken a different tack, and we want to make sure that when you walk into the boardroom, you've got the confidence to actually be able to act, because you understand what you're supposed to do. You've had some experience of doing it. You know some kinds of questions to ask. It's the practicalities of being a director that we're really trying to focus on, and then repeating that multiple times. And we'll dig into that in a second. So we want you to become better equipped. That's really what it comes down to. So before you start on the journey as an inspiring director, make sure you've got that foundational understanding of how it works, so that when you arrive, you can make better strategic decisions in the boardroom and you can really add value from day one. So to give you some kind of context on what we're talking about in terms of what it means to be a high performance director, our definition is that it's obsessed with creating meaningful economic impact through their role on the board and the role the company plays in the economy. So we talk a lot about that broader stakeholder engagement, broader understanding of risk, broader understanding of impact that a company can have on the environment in which it's operating. And I just mentioned it earlier, that such a director is not afraid to have the tough conversation. So you need to have confidence of what I should be asking or what I must be asking, because if I don't, then I'm not fulfilling my legal duties. I'm not fulfilling my mandate as a director. I'm not looking after the best interests of the company. I'm just sitting back and letting it happen. And the consequences of that is that you will be included in whatever legal ramifications there are, regardless of whether you contributed in the board meeting or not, because the moment you leave the board meeting, you're treated as equals. So it's being able to have the tough conversations with confidence, and also understand what those mundane aspects are that enable board success. So what does a rhythm really look like? How do I hold the other board members accountable to make sure that we're doing things properly? We're following not so much the best practice, because best practice is my best practice may not be your best practice, but what is the best practice of this organization? What should we be doing in this organization? And are we actually following that process and adhering to the values that we've set? So it's really coming to that tough conversations is the bit that really makes a difference, and understanding the mundane bits, because there's often expectations from a director of this is something I'm promoted to, whereas actually it's almost a demotion. You get paid less, you have more time commitment, and you have no power. You're equals. It's not a hierarchy. It's a team of equals. But it's immensely satisfying, and you can have massive impact if you do it well. And a board is one that, through its rhythm and decision making, so boards need to make decisions. That's a fundamental part of what they should be doing. They need a rhythm, so have regular board meetings and regular pre-board meetings and regular follow-ups after the board meetings. There's things that need to happen in a particular order with particular timelines in order to be efficient and effective. And they're holding the company accountable to a performance standard higher than it has ever had before. That can be quite difficult in a family business, because you're now trying to hold other family members accountable to delivering on the expectations of shareholders, but also based on, well, this is what we've said we're going to do. Now we need to actually go and do it. And who is accountable for making the next step? Who is accountable for making sure we deliver in these different areas? And that can be quite difficult if the family dynamics are such that it's difficult to separate out work from family. And we can't compartmentalize them to this extent that we can be friends in the family context, but we need to hold each other accountable and be really serious in a business context. And if we do that right, then we're going to improve the return to shareholders, and we're going to also improve the impact on other stakeholders on a much more sustainable basis. So that's the idea. So we want to upskill you as an individual, but we also want to help you understand this is the context, this is what you need to be thinking about as a director, and this is how you work most effectively as a team. And there's plenty of things coming into the press. Some of this is older news, but it's still valid. So even the former Bank of China chairman has been indicted for a governance issue. We've had Global Directors and Office Survey report says the top 7 risks, noticeable increase in civil litigation group actions. So that's also a big shift, particularly in South Africa. You can now have a group action to hold directors accountable, whereas it tended to be lots. If you weren't as an individual, if you didn't have the means and the resources to bring a case to court, then it didn't go anywhere. Now you can come together as a group and put a civil group action together, which means it's more affordable, but you've got more voices, that's got more impact, it's going to have a bigger effect if you take it to court. And that's starting to show up in insurance as well. So insurance premiums for directors and officers insurance are increasing because of that potential massive increase in potential litigation and the potential personal liability. So as an individual, have we done everything we should have done along the way? Because there's a likelihood that it'll be personally liable, not just the company being liable for some indiscretion. And then there's a big one that happened at South African Airways. This is really highlights the consequences. So she experienced, the company had experienced financial losses and included blocking and delaying critical turnaround initiatives. No, she wasn't running the company effectively. As a chairperson through the board, she was meddling in other things that she shouldn't necessarily have been involved with. So poor relationship with CEO management doesn't help. Suppressing diverse views, definitely a big no-no. Avoiding difficult conversations, we've just mentioned that is how important that is. The consequence was that she was declared a delinquent director for life, which means she can never hold a director position in any company ever again. And if this is a move as an aspiring director to a new, more of a portfolio career or just a different level in the organization, if that's been completely blocked because you had one instance where you made a proper mistake and now ended up as delinquent director, that path is completely cut off. You can't go any further. That's the end of that. So what we're trying to do, the main thing that we're trying to do is help and explain, and this is coming out of the end of all of our programs. One of the biggest learnings of the students that have attended is I now have a better understanding of the 3 hats of shareholder versus director and versus manager. And the scary thing is that that is the case, because why aren't we being taught this at school? Why aren't we being taught it as part of an MBA at the level we should? There's still a fundamental misconception about what the differences are and how clearly defined the differences are. So we walk into, and as an entrepreneur particularly, this is a big problem. As an entrepreneur, we've got an idea, we take it to market, we start a company, we set it up, we register it with the CIPC in South Africa. Now we've got a company. We've been registered as the director, we've been registered as the ultimate beneficiary, so we've got our shareholders listing, and we're the manager, we're running the business, off we go, without having any understanding of what the responsibilities are, legal responsibilities are of the directorship. And the fact that the company actually exists because the law has given the directors the power to run the business, to have a business. The management are doing the doing. The directors are responsible for making sure it's actually acting in the best way and is delivering services in the best way, etc. So we need to understand that director hat, regardless of whether we're going to be serving on someone else's board, if we are a director in an organization in which we're part of the operational context as well, because it's fundamentally different from being a manager. So the reason why we've used these different colored blocks is to try and emphasize that shareholders can come from anywhere. You could have inherited the shares, you could have bought the shares, you could have been given the shares, you might have put money in, you might have earned them through sweat equity, you might have 1 share, you might have 100 shares, You might be a majority shareholder, you might be a minority shareholder. There's all kinds of different flavors of shareholding. The only thing you have in common is you have at least one share, which means you have at least one vote. Directors is very different because the basket of rights that the shareholders has is very limited, and it's very different in that I have a right as a shareholder to appoint directors or be involved in the process of appointing directors through a vote. And I have a right to a return, but that's basically it. Whereas the board, the group of board is treated as a team of equals always. You only ever have one vote unless it's specifically mentioned in your MOI that you can have a carrying vote, and that often, if you've got an independent chair, then the carrying vote is often with the independent chair, but it might also be with the CEO. It depends on the structure of the company and the board. But it's a specific allocation of an extra vote if there is a hung decision and we need to move forward and someone needs to break the deadlock and move forward. But the idea is it's a group team of equals, and they are only thinking about what's in the best interest of business. They're not thinking about what's in their best interest, and they have to own the strategy. As soon as shareholders get involved in the strategy conversation, they've broken the curtain. Management is led by the CEO and is very different in it's a hierarchy. So you need one person who is ultimately responsible, and there'll be different systems of rotation of CEOs. I'm not in favor of dual CEOs. I've seen it rarely work, and I've seen it often fail. So rather have one person who's ultimately responsible and that the reports to the board rather than multiple. And then you can have the executive team below, but there's one person who's basically representing management when they're in the boardroom. And they all have a relationship with the company, but there's a hard line, as I said before, between what the shareholders can and can't do and the rest. So shareholders have an AGM, they have once a year, they have an opportunity to hear and see what the financials are doing, they have an opportunity to see how the company's performing against their statement of intent, they have an opportunity to receive a dividend, because that's where you have two choices in terms of anything that's left over after operational cost. Do I pay it out as a dividend, or do I reinvest it back into the company? So shareholders can receive a dividend, they can receive capital growth, and they can define who the leadership is sitting around the board table. But once they've delegated that authority to the board, that's it. As soon as you break that line, you start meddling with operations, start meddling with strategy, you've broken that line and you're perceived to be as a director, which means you've broken that limited liability boundary, and now you're equally liable. So it's confusing, it messes up the conversations within the organization if with a shareholder hat on, you are involved in the other areas. So it's important to leave the shareholder hat at the door, and that can only happen if you understand what the director hat looks like, what the responsibilities of the director looks like. Because at the moment, what happens is shareholders walk into the room of management and say, well, I'm the majority shareholder, therefore. That is not what that responsibility is as a shareholder. You might have that responsibility to give instruction to management as a director, but you definitely don't have that responsibility as a shareholder. So you can't swing your weight around just because you're a majority shareholder in an operational context. The only thing you can do is hire and fire a director to improve the performance of the organization. And then there's more of a permeable line between the board and management, because there's more information flow and there's definitely more overlap, typically with directors, executive directors being on the board and obviously being in management as well. So there's the selfish relationship with the shareholders, there's a selfless relationship with the board, and then there's a two-way relationship based on contractual requirements and interests that move between the two. I'm interested in selfishly receiving some kind of remuneration, but I'm selflessly dedicating my self to the organization because I'm working for the organization. I've got a contract that must deliver X, Y, Z. So that the entire course really is based on all of the different aspects of these three hats and understanding the responsibilities on a much deeper level, so that when we're in the boardroom, we know this is what we could talk about in the boardroom. Sorry, that's a shareholders conversation. That must move to a shareholders meeting. No, that's an operational discussion. That must move down to an executive meeting. No, we're not getting the sufficient information from the management. It's not clearly defined. It's not accurate. It's my responsibility as director to push down and say, please, can you redo this? We can't work with this. We can't make a decision based on this information because it's got too many holes in it, etc. So holding that space is very difficult. It's made easier if you've got independent directors on the board, but well, that's part of the course, is to understand the different roles, the different responsibilities, and the different categories of directors and what their specific responsibilities are. Does that make sense? That's a very, very quick, very, very high level introduction to the concept, but that's really what we're trying to fundamentally get across, because this is where the problems start. Shareholder disputes, directors not understanding responsibilities, management not taking responsibility for their part or not reporting accurately up to the board. So all of those different layers start impacting each other negatively, and then the organization suffers as a result. Maybe anyone got an experience share of where they've seen a shareholder dispute and because they didn't understand their responsibilities that caused an impact to a business? Or even directors not understanding what their responsibilities are and not driving the strategy properly. Anyone? Okay, so part of the course is we will be going through all of the different areas that we have identified that need to be thought about from a governance perspective, from a strategy perspective. So obviously due north is where you're going. What's the purpose of the organization? What's the direction? So in module 3 of the course, we go from foundational to foundational modules. One where we very much focus on directors' duties and understanding the 3 hats. Then the second module, and I'll touch on it in a second, we talk about how to build the team, and we use a tool called Contribution Compass. And then from then on, module 3 onwards, we start our way around this circle of having board meetings, simulating discussion decision papers on each topic. And then you have videos, you have readings linked to each topic to try and keep it manageable, keep it bite-sized. Focus, this month we're doing this, next month we're doing something else. Otherwise it becomes quite overwhelming. Hand up, Roman. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Tim. 2 questions. What's the difference between executive and non-executive director? And the second, how is performance of the director evaluated by the shareholders?
So first question, executive, non-exec. Executive means I've got a full-time contract with the organization. So I've got some clearly defined operational role. I'm the CEO, I'm the CFO, I'm the COO. I've got my main income, my contract is with the organization. Therefore, I'm executive, and I'm probably not remunerated anymore because I'm also serving on the board. It just happens to be I've got a contract and I'm registered as a director, so I'm serving on the board. Non-exec director has no contract. They might be serving as a consultant now again. They might have a relationship as, for example, a legal counsel that helps with the organization. It's not good practice to have your auditor on the board. You might have some kind of external CFO, financial outsourced CFO kind of person who's highly skilled in the strategy of finance that you don't have a space for internally. They may serve on the board as a non-exec, but it basically means that I don't have a full-time operational contract. So I shouldn't be involved with the day-to-day operations. I should be separate from day-to-day operations. And a shareholder might fit into that category if they're not serving a role in the business. The other third category is independent non-exec director, and they're the ones that are really useful and really add value because they have no connection to the organization whatsoever with any kind of operational context or shareholder context or other hat that they're wearing. They are just the director, and they are independent of anything to do with the company. So they didn't have a prior relationship. They're not a member of the family. They're not some kind of service provider. And the reason why that's so powerful is because you can then give a properly independent perspective of whatever's going in an organization. And it's staggering how quickly you can see the issues in an organization from an independent perspective compared with someone who's been in the weeds for years and years and years, and they just can't see the bigger picture. So we'll talk about it in a sec, but what King talks about, in fact, I may as well talk about it now. What King 4 and 5 in South Africa talks about is having more non-exec directors than executive directors. Why? Because it forces the conversation to be a director conversation in the room instead of dropping to the lowest common denominator, which might be operational. Then of those non-exec directors, you want the majority to be independent, because then the conversation with the non-exec directors is driven much more by an independent perspective than some other emotional or relationship connection that might be clouding their decision making. Which means we're going to make better decisions. We're going to think things through more logically and less emotionally. And we're also going to see things that we can't see because we're not focused exclusively on the operations. We're not stuck in the weeds. We have the opportunity to stand back, stand up, and look out and see what the bigger picture is, because that's the way the team's constructed. And we talk a lot about that, and we go through a practical example in module 2 to help people understand that this is really complex, and it's often short-circuited and done badly because we haven't thought through all the ramifications of just bringing so-and-so onto our board because they did a good job somewhere else. They may not have the relevant skills, they may not have the right values fit, they may not even have relevant experience to what this organization is trying to deal with right now. Does that answer your question, Rowan?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so then we've got the 8 segments, and we work through each of those 8 segments month by month by month, so that you build the whole, and they also interrelated. So shareholder strategy and direction is obviously influenced by stakeholder engagement. You know, particular stakeholders have an influence, and then that's going to flow through to changing your strategy. You've identified some massive risk that needs to flow through to the strategy. So each of these components do overlap and talk to each other, but they are distinct in the topics that we cover in the board process, just as I said, trying to make it more manageable and easier to understand the theory and then apply it in a practical environment in the board meeting you have with your group once a month in the monthly sessions. Then we define who's in the boardroom more clearly by using natural energy to determine the spread of activating energy. Is someone who wants going to change things, ignite change, they're looking to do things differently. It's that kind of fuzzy head in the clouds, lots of new ideas, lots of stuff going on. Inspiring energy that's a spring energy. Sparring is a summer energy, so you've got all these new shoots, but unless there's something to help them grow, there's some sunshine coming up, they're not going to grow. So the inspiring energy is the people energy. We need people to take the idea forward. So have you got a strong people energy, or have you got strong activating energy? Your approach to a problem is going to be different. Then sustaining energy is your autumn energy. It's feet on the ground, it's very sensible, it's process driven. So I'm going to take the idea, I'm going to nourish it and help it grow, because I'm going to help it be delivered effectively. I'm going to maintain the relationship with the clients, etc. So it's a crossover between the people energy, and then the last one is refining is the winter energy, cold hard facts. So we want to understand as an individual, what is your dominant energy? Do you typically like to come up with lots of new ideas and change things? That's me. I'm 42% activating energy, so I love variety, absolutely love variety. I love doing lots of different workshops with lots of different companies because I learn something all the time, but I'm also exposed to lots of different new things. Hopeless at sustaining energy, which is implementing consistent processes over long periods of time, because it's going to drive me mad. I want to change it all the time. So we need both perspectives in the boardroom. We need a balance in the boardroom. And similarly, across the East and West axis, we need someone who's going to look at the people issues and the people potential versus someone who's looking at the data and analytics and looking at the trends and the financials and saying, well, the numbers are saying X, and there's someone saying, no, but the people are saying Y. How do we bring those together? So we need all 4 of those energies to be as closely balanced as possible in a boardroom. And we use this tool called Contribution Compass to try and help and support working that out. So each of you in the course will do your Contribution Compass profiler. It'll tell you you're a catalyst, a champion, a coach, or whatever it might be. It'll tell you the individual percentages in the 4 segments, because no 2 catalysts are the same, no 2 champions are the same. We have a fingerprint, a unique fingerprint of the different energies. And then we do a team report, which helps us identify what is the profile of this team. Is this a team that is showing up as a coach profile when they're all together, which means they're going to focus more on the people issues than the data? And when we go back to looking at the governance compass, that shows up with, we're going to look at performance and effective leadership and that kind of stuff, but we're not going to be looking at the financials and conformance and those rules and are so boring and risk and, oh God, I can't do that. That's just not something I can work with. And that's really, really critical to understand at a board level, because then we can see the gaps and then we can work out, will we bring a non-exec director in to close that gap, or we bring in someone from an executive team into the meeting when we're talking about that particular topic to try and close the gap. That's why that's critical. And it's, again, something that's not normally considered when you're building a team. So it's part of your experience is we try to build the team in as balanced a way as possible. So you will have someone with high active energy, someone with high inspiring energy, someone with high sustaining, someone with high refining in your team, ideally, so that you can see how the ebbs and flows of energy and ebbs and flows of perspective and ebbs and flows of engagement happen based on what's being discussed and is it relevant to that particular person's energy. Because then you will see it and notice it in real life and go, oh, that's why these two clash all the time, or that's why we just continually make the same mistake, because we've got too many people with a similar profile. They all like each other, or got on well with each other, but they don't necessarily help take the organization in the direction it needs to go in that particular moment. So that's the sort of other piece of the puzzle that we're trying to fulfill. Any questions on those sort of foundation blocks of the course? William, Uncle? Okay. Abitsi?
Maybe just a comment from my side. It's interesting to see this contribution campus. I haven't seen it before, but you've explained it quite well, because at the post, and also in terms of having diverse skills on the board, it also helps that you have the different characters, as you've put them, in the roles that they play, their experience and knowledge versus how they present themselves and the character they would assume on the board. So that's quite interesting.
And it's always interesting once you understand how this whole thing works with energies and profiles. When you look at a TV series that's really successful, it typically has mixture of all of these different elements. There's someone who's always come up with the new ideas. There's the other person saying, no, I don't think we should do that today. Oh, I think we should do something else. Or there's someone's lively, bubbly people person, extrovert. Oh, let's go. And then the other one, look, I don't think we've got enough money in the budget. I was just looking at our kitty. They're all there in those really, really successful series. And that's what we're trying to bring to play in the board. We need to understand that. We need to think in all of those different ways. Otherwise, we're going to miss opportunities and we're going to miss risks.
The balance is needed. But do you also have like a view of boards that have not found the right balance and structure, and maybe where they fail in that they have certain energies, as you put them, or characters that lead more to one and they don't have others?
So what typically happens is founders are often catalysts or chairman. He's top 2. They've got activating energy to got the thing started. They've got some idea of the market they're aiming for, so they're inspiring their audience. They're bringing like moths to a flame. They get the business going. But they don't have someone in their team who's this refining cultivator or conductor energy that's looking at the risks, looking at the numbers, looking at the viability of an idea to the extent that they need. So it's interesting looking at companies that got going quickly and became successful over time. So for example, We don't know for sure. We've never got them to do the test, but on the balance of probability, we're pretty certain that Bill Gates is high activating energy, probably a catalyst leaning towards champion. Steve Ballmer is almost certainly a coach. He was really good at inspiring the team. He was really good at motivating and getting the right people to deliver on what the idea was. And then the other players who came in at the beginning and over time were very much more risk averse. So they were slowing things down, or they were making sure a process was in place to manage something and monitor something before it went round and got the next new iteration and the next new idea came to fore. And as the organization of Microsoft matured, it needed less Bill Gates energy. It failed for a while because it didn't have enough of that activating energy, but it could sustain and become a mature organization because it managed the people, it managed the relationships with the clients, and it did the numbers, and it moved forward. So any organization needs a balance of those energies as far as possible. So start with the activating, make sure you've brought in someone who's really good at process, who's going to get it delivered. If you've got high people energy, bring someone in who's really good at the data and the numbers, because high people energy are terrible at the numbers. And numbers people are terrible at inspiring people. They want to go and sit and do things on their own. They don't want to have the conversation, the chat, and be part of a crowd. Inspiring is about being part of the crowd and having the chat, but they're not going to necessarily go away and do the admin. So it's all of these things are really, really critical. And when we do a diagnostic of a team and we do a diagnostic of a board, often we can see, okay, well, there's no cultivators in the team, or there's no custodians in the team. What's happened? Well, the sustainability part is really, really struggling, and the risk part's all over the place. They're not managing risk. They don't have a risk matrix. They're really not monitoring it effectively. They're starting to breach conformance rules. It's all of this stuff is a problem. They don't have financials coming out regularly, and it's because the energy of that team is over here, and that's what's going to happen. I get more energy from doing that exciting stuff. I don't get energy from doing the more risky, boring stuff. But this personality profile loves it. So you have to balance it. Thank you. Good question. So the program, as I said, we have the first session. So we have facilitated 4-hour sessions once a month for 11 months. We've tried multiple times to come up with a shorter way of doing it, but we haven't been able to, because the simulation takes at least 7 meetings or 7 iterations to run. So we use a company simulator from the States, comes from a management university in the States. And we use that to generate financials so that you make decisions in your board meeting, you put in your inputs into the system, it gives you different financials. Next month, you take those results, you make decisions, and so you go. To try and gamify it, try and make it a little bit more real, try and give you an opportunity to take some risks, try things you may not try in the real world, because someone might lose their job or lose a ton of money. You can make mistakes, no one gets hurt. So that's why we've tried to keep we've got those 8 blocks in the middle. So the first one, foundation, setting the scene, talking about the responsibilities of the different hats, etc. Board team, building the team. How do you build a team? Worked example. This is a company. These are the directors that are available. Put together a board and explain why. Then we move into strategy and direction. So you have your first board meeting. So however big the cohort is, it might be 10, 15, 20 people, is broken down into 1, 2, or 3 boards. And then you run the simulator as a board, as a team, with a name, a company name, with a company brand, logo, and a product that you've decided as a cohort and as you've decided as a team. So again, we want to make this as real as possible. We want to make it feel like you've been in a board meeting talking about a real company as far as we possibly can. We want to move from theory to practice in every aspect, wherever it makes sense. And then you move through those 8 board meetings, have those board, and then the 10th one. So we're talking about, you asked a question earlier about evaluation. Annually, a board should go through a board evaluation process. You might not want to do it with an independent board evaluator every year, but certainly it needs to go through the process. You need to do the questionnaires, you need to do the feedback, you need to work out how to do things better. And that board evaluation looks very different from a personal performance management process because it's focused on the work that the board needs to do. Have we defined the strategy and how well? Have we got some kind of organizational culture in place, and when do we monitor it? How often do we monitor it? What's our culture as a board? Have we all turned up? Did we all prepare properly? And what does it say in our board charter? All of those kind of things are different elements of this that we need to be evaluating at the end of the year. And part of that is the evaluation from a shareholder perspective is shareholders need to give the board a shareholder statement of intent saying this is what we want. We want this kind of return. We want this kind of dividend. This is our dividend policy. Now you need to perform against that from a company perspective. And then you report back at the AGM. And now the board has a choice, and shareholders have a choice. Well, the auditor obviously hasn't done a good job because these financials are all over the place. They're not accurate. Why didn't they pick that up? Okay, we want to replace the auditor. Or directors have been doing a rubbish job. They're coming up for rotation. Or this one, I don't think we need to, we want to even wait for rotation. So we want to remove so-and-so, or we're not bringing them back in again on the second rotation, or whatever it might be. And then these are the things we're concerned about, just so you know. They're not forcing a decision on the board. It's an opportunity for shareholders to give feedback to the board so it can do a better job. And that's what an AGM should be. And then the module 11, which I've got one of this afternoon, we go through all of the different modules and give people an opportunity to sort of fill in any gaps, things they didn't really understand at the time, but haven't had an opportunity to ask the question, etc. So it just sort of goes through all of the different key elements and rounds out the program. And then off you go and go back into the real world and try and implement it as best you can. So the commitment from a time perspective is 4 hours per month in a facilitated online session. And then we recommend that if you put aside a day a week, you'll be absolutely fine, of reading, preparing for the board meetings when they come, watching the videos, all of that kind of stuff. Some people can do it half a day, some people do it in a couple of hours a week. It depends on how fast you read, what speed you listen to your videos to, etc., etc. But if you're at least prepared for putting half day to a day a week aside, then you're not going to get caught out. And that's not that dissimilar from serving on a board as non-exec director. You should be spending at least a day preparing for a board meeting. So that's why we've tried to set up this rhythm. If you were serving on a board, at a board meeting every month, how much time would you need to prepare? And get used to the fact that that board meeting is sacrosanct. It's in your diary. You must be there. You must attend. Okay, any questions on that?
I have a question, Tim. I just wanted
Hi,
to
Jane.
know what time do the sessions take place? Is it in the morning, afternoon, or evening?
I'll show. So this is the schedule of the next 2 cohorts. So the answer to the question is depends. So we typically alternate between a cohort that starts that all of the sessions are in the afternoon because that appeals to people from particular time zones, or we have sessions that all of the sessions in the morning, and again it appeals to people from particular time zones or their calendars or how their workflow works, etc. So we found that's the easiest way of making sure that everyone has an opportunity. And then we give you the full calendar. So this is the schedule for the next cohort. If you can't attend 3 or 4 of these sessions because you're away, then don't join that cohort. We need to make sure that before you even start, you can put those times and dates in your diary and you can attend. Because if you miss more than 2, we won't be able to give you a certificate of completion or a certificate of competence.
Thank you.
I'm happy to distribute these afterwards. So yeah, put in the chat if you'd like a 30-minute consult just to go through your specific circumstances. We can go through the details, timing, etc. Happy to do that. Costs, we've got different costs, unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately. SA residence, it's 58,750. The rest of the world is 3,995. But the way the dollar's going, that 3,995 is becoming closer and closer to the SA residence rate. A while ago, the SA residence got an absolute bargain, but it's been fascinating to see how the dollar value has dropped dramatically in the last while. We've gone from what, 19.20 to the dollar to 16. So we've had plenty of cohorts, and then just to get some idea of what's included. So you get a copy of Traversing the Avalanche, written by our founder, Carl Bates, that you don't read the whole book in one go. You read certain chapters during the course of the program. So by the time you get to the end of the 11 months, you've read the whole book. So the chapters are broken down into segments that are related to the different course components. We've talked about the natural energy, so you get your contribution compass profiler, and we try and refer to that as much as possible during the course and try and get you to think about how that contribution compass energy has contributed in each board meeting. So you start to see that particular individuals will be very interested in one topic, but as you move around the circle, they start to disengage because that's not their energy, that's not their interest. And it's important to understand that, as we've said, because you want to make sure you build a balanced board, but there are consequences of that too, to try and keep people in discipline and engaged throughout. There's UK certified CPT points. So if you use it in your industry, you get 64 CPT points. And we are in the process of launching what we're calling Sirdar Basecamp. So firstly, the program will be hosted on this new platform, but you'll get access to the rest of the platform and the rest of the information that's available on that platform for a period. We've put 90 days here and maybe longer. We're not sure exactly when it'll be fully launched, but that's the intent, that you'll be on the platform already. And then as part of the program, you'll be given access to other aspects as they come on track for a period of time. So you get a chance to use it, experience it, and see if it's valuable. And we definitely want the feedback on whether there's value in that or not. So this is what our website looks like now, and we've got this login. So you can apply for a membership now, and you get the sort of open free access. You will be given access as soon as you join the program as well. And then once you're in, then you can see the Applied Directorship program. And this is what it looks like. So you've got the list of what modules you've got available. Then when you click on that module, it gives you a list of all the different materials that you need to watch. And then when you watch a video, it keeps track of have you watched it or not. And then you can keep track of how much of that particular module's materials you've covered. Just makes it so much easier to measure it. We know that if something's measured, it gets done. And we've been running this program since 2017. So we figured out that the gamification, the competition, the monitoring, to be able to see, oh, this person's really getting behind. We need to have some kind of interaction with them to make sure that they catch up. We have had people who've just really struggled and they've had to pause the program and then start again later. I wouldn't recommend that as a initiative, as something you want to do right from the word go. But we are sensitive to that, and we realize that life happens, and we're not going to forego the opportunity of continuing at a time when you have more time to actually absorb all the information, etc. What else was there? Yeah, so we've done this is 60, the one finishing today is our 63rd cohort, I think. Where's that stat? Yeah, 66 cohorts, sorry. So we will be completing our 66th cohort today. And we've been running this course since 2017, and we've had well over 800 participants from all over South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. And now in the Middle East, we've got a lot more people coming in from Mauritius, the islands as we spread out from the African continent. We've got people from the UK who've done the course as well. So it's becoming much more globally recognized as being an important training program, which is always good to see. Any other questions? Anything from you? Just going down my list.
Hi, Tim. I did post in the chat asking if you do board placements after the course.
Yes, and we do board placements regardless of whether you've done the course, but it's just we find it easier to place people if they have done the course, because then we know what we're dealing with at a different level. We have a board placement team. The challenge in Africa, and it's it's way less of a problem in the UK and the US and other parts of Europe. We have very few companies that are looking. So our challenge is not finding directors who want to be placed. The challenge is finding companies that want directors. So that's always the caveat. By all means, put your name down the list, and if an opportunity comes up, then you'll put forward for it if your skills and profile and all the rest of it are a fit. But the number of opportunities are very limited in South Africa, particularly because companies just they definitely don't advertise, and even when they have directors, they don't have a rotation process, so they'll keep directors for years, decades. So that's our constant challenge. So our focus this year is finding companies and encouraging them to rotate their directors so that we can open up more opportunities for people with training and experience, etc., going forward. But as Roman mentioned earlier, there's organizations like VAB, there's various people in the UK that are looking, that will help you find advisory positions, possibly in the UK, or board positions in the UK, where there is far more understanding that director rotation is important, and that bringing external directors onto a board is important, whereas we haven't got to that point of maturity in Africa yet. But what I will say is that the course, if you have the opportunity, the course will put you in a place where you will move up the list significantly in terms of ability, value add, opportunity to serve, etc. So unfortunately, it does come down to your personal network, being out there, being on LinkedIn, having a profile that speaks to your director experience rather than just executive experience, etc., etc. And we can help with that. But it's really, really, really difficult to find placements.
Just another question, Tim.
Hi, Jane.
How does Sirdar differ from IOD SA?
So IOD is an institution. It's an industry organization. It's not-for-profit that owns the King 4 and now King 5. We don't do that. We are a for-profit company that does consulting services. So fundamental difference in the construct. They also focus on teaching you the theory and getting certified against the theory. We don't do certified exams. That's not what we're aiming to achieve. We want to make sure that directors of any company, and particularly private companies, because that's where we see the biggest gap, know and understand what their responsibilities are, how to act, how to get best value from a board, and how to drive the performance of their organization they're involved with. So if you're looking at corporate positions and looking at corporate directorships potentially, then the IOD is probably the first thing they look at, because there is very much this sort of tick box mindset of, oh, well, if you've got the certification, therefore you've passed step one. So we've had a lot of people who've done both, and we've had a lot of people who've decided to just do our course or just do the IOD course. So it's worth considering what you're going to use the training for. What is the outcome that you wish to achieve? And as I said, happy, just put down, I don't know, consult or something in the chat if you're interested, and I can talk it through with you in your particular circumstance. Say, look, actually, you're going to be far better suited to do the IOD course, or actually it looks like you've got some opportunities. I think you're going to really get value from doing our course. Does that help? Okay, cool. I'll talk you through with it. Roman, anything from you?
No, it's all clear. Thank you.
Good. William? Any questions?
Thank you. Just a follow-up questions on the placements. You talked about UK and so on, so it's quite possible that you can get placement in the UK or elsewhere, depending on what fit you are at. How you're fitting, and then also that there is no chance of a face-to-face meeting with the cohort.
Not on this particular, these two particular cohorts. We've been running them online. We do have, well, we are looking at when we can get face-to-face cohorts going again. We always used to run them face-to-face, then stopped during COVID. And then when we asked at the end of COVID if people wanted to go back to face-to-face, at the time and for a while since, people have said, well, actually, it's way more convenient. I get to meet people from all over the continent, et cetera, et cetera. It's just more efficient for me to do it online than face-to-face. So we're looking to potentially do face-to-face in Nairobi again and in Accra again. We may do more of a hybrid kind of thing in South Africa, where we have maybe 1 or 2 face-to-face sessions, so people get a chance to meet each other properly in their cohort and in their boards. It's difficult in South Africa because then you end up with 1 in Joburg, 1 in Cape Town, 1 in Durban, 1 in somewhere else, and there just aren't enough people applying to make that viable. So that's always the dilemma.
Okay, and the placement in the UK and elsewhere?
So all of this training is applicable anywhere in the world.
Oh, okay, perfect.
You are learning the basic principles of being a director. You're not learning the specifics of the Companies Act in each country. We are teaching you and what's been interesting is the new ISO 37000 standard, which we also covered in the course, has been adopted by over 100 countries that have adopted ISO standards. But it's not a prescriptive standard, it's a descriptive standard. It's the first they've ever done. And that's what governance is trying to move towards. That's what King 345 has been moving towards, is principles. These are the principles. This is not a tick box exercise. And ISO 37000 is doing the same thing. And when you put the two next to each other, I'm not sure if I've got the slide, no, I don't have it here. You put them next to each other, our governance compass covers all of the same elements that the ISO 37000 standard covers. So we're confident that if you go through this process, you'll have enough understanding to apply governance anywhere because the principles are the same. And that's why we're using a UK-based company to give the CBD points, to try and indicate that this is an internationally recognized course, not just something that talks about South African Companies Act. Does that help?
Yes, understood. Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else? Abitsi, any questions from you?
Comfortable. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And yeah, as I said, just put console in the box if you'd like a quick 30-minute chat with me at some point. Great. Otherwise, time is up. That was an hour. That was what you contracted to spend with me. Thank you very much for spending the hour with me. I hope it was useful. I hope you learned something, and really looking forward to seeing you on one of our programs at some point.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. It was a great session, Tim.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Drop me an email by all means, or give me a call on the cell phone if you've got any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you very much.